Welcome back to Old School Sports and our Out of the Park Baseball 25 series. Can we save the Oakland A's? And the saving of the A's has gone pretty well here thus far in the 2036 offseason. After just missing out on a division title and having to play in a wild card series, we took out our divisional rival Los Angeles Angels 2-1 in a wild card series that we hosted. And now we just upended the top-seeded Toronto Blue Jays 3-1 in the American League Division Series. So that has moved us on to the American League Championship Series, our third appearance in the ALCS over the course of this playthrough, our first since 2031, when we unfortunately fell in the ALCS. Our other time in the ALCS was in 2029 when we went on to win it all. So we'll see if we can make it 2 out of 3 in our ALCS appearances with these Oakland A's team. As we talked about at the end of the last episode, a very evenly matched series here between us and the White Sox. They are division winners, so they will have the home field advantage. But both we and the White Sox won 95 games. Both we and the White Sox allowed 698 runs this year. Our offense was slightly better, ranking first in the AL with 884 runs scored, which was just 12 more than the second place White Sox. The White Sox did take 4 out of 6 games against us this year, so should be a very evenly matched series here, and we'll see if we can keep the good momentum we've had in the first 2 rounds of the playoff going. 2 series down, potentially 2 to go. We are 4 wins away from a World Series appearance and potentially 8 wins away from a World Series title. And we've made no changes to our playoff roster since the last round. Both teams have their pitching staff set up the way they want. As we talked about, took out the Blue Jays in 4 games. The White Sox swept the Rangers. We've had, at this point on October 19th, we've had 4 days off since our last game. The White Sox with even more time to rest. So everyone has their rotations set up the way they want them. Both teams are well rested in terms of our bullpens as well. So we'll see whether we can get the jump on the White Sox. The goal would certainly be to take one of these first 2 games and go home tied at worst. Our ace, Jackson Ferris, 17-5 with a 3.33 ERA this year on the mound, starting game 1 for us, just like he did in the divisional series. Kevin Pilla on the mound for the Chicago White Sox, 27-year-old, 15-11 this year with a 3.22 ERA, led the league with the fewest walks per 9 innings and the best strikeout to walk ratio while putting up a 5.5 WAR. So similar to some of those matchups that we had in the divisional series, as good as our pitching is and has been, there may be certainly some games here against the White Sox where we feel like they've probably got the advantage in the pitching staff, at least in terms of the starters. And you certainly could say that today, but we will see what we can do against the right-hander Kevin Pilla here in Game 1 of the ALCS. And a 6-5 loss, and it looks like our closer, Kamani O'Banner, took the L. We got a home run from our catcher, Dave Ackley. Taking a look at the box score, we jumped out with 2 runs in the 3rd, 2 more in the 6th, so we had a 4-1 lead heading into the late innings of the game. They came back with 3 in the 8th and took a 5-4 lead. We scored a run in the 9th on that Ackley solo homer. But then, unfortunately, in the bottom of the ninth, a run-scoring single by Zach Hickok, and we are down 1-0 in the series. We got 2 hits games from Ackley and Brailovsky. Ackley with 3 ribbies, Ramos with the other 2 for our Oakland Athletics. 3 errors, Doug Weiss, Andy Toribio, and Yanquiel Fernandez, and we ended up allowing 3 unearned runs on the day when Weiss was pitching, so that's certainly unfortunate. Weiss, the college pitcher who's come up through our organization, had a rough outing, 5 hits over just 1 2/3 innings, 4 runs, although only 1 of them was earned. Kamani O'Banner didn't record an out, allowed 2 hits and the run in the bottom of the ninth on 7 pitches, and that was all she wrote. We did get a quality start from Jackson Ferris. He definitely outpitched Kevin Pilla, but unfortunately our bullpen, which has been really good all season long, did not come through here today, and we are down 1-0 early in this ALCS. So the goal was to steal a game in Chicago before heading home to Oakland. Now we've got to get the job done today. We've got Chase Dora, the new addition to the team, back in July, actually on the 4th of July with Cincinnati, who we picked up in that big trade for Brady Harris. Looking forward to see what Dora can do for us over the next 4 years, hopefully. But right now we're most concerned with a good outing from him today. He's going up against another good one, Jeremy Martin. You may remember we looked at him back in the 2028 draft coming out of Indiana. Liked him a lot as well. 12-8 this year with a 3.13 ERA. American League low 2.46 BABIP against him. So another good, solid right-handed pitcher on the mound for the White Sox. We'll see whether we can get the W today before we head home to Oakland. And we do a 9-0 victory, so dominant performance. Home runs by Colt Keith, 2 by Yanquiel Fernandez, Brailovsky, and Ackley with his second of the series. So Keith and Fernandez, who were both additions to the squad right before the trade deadline, come through, along with Chase Dora, who was also a addition to the squad not too far before the trade deadline, running the third, and then kind of broke things open in the 5th with a solo homer from Fernandez and a 2-run shot from Brailovsky. Everybody except the youngster Arturo Uresti had at least a hit today for our Oakland A's. Colt Keith, the wily veteran, 3 for 4, 3 runs scored and a ribby, and he has pushed his batting average in the playoffs up to .500 with 2 homers and 8 ribbies for us. Ramos, who led the American League in ribbies this year, now with 13 already in this run in the playoffs. Dora, just 1 hit over 6 1/3 innings pitched, and then Chris Carl came on with 2 2/3 innings of hitless relief. So 1 hitter for Dora and Carl combined. A couple of potential injuries, David Mireles and Raleigh Purchase for the White Sox. So we did what we wanted to do in Chicago. We got a W, and we earned the W on a dominant performance by Chase Dora, a 1-hitter in the playoffs, and certainly with Dora, Keith, and Yanquiel Fernandez all having big games for us, making us feel like the moves that we made right before the trade deadline have put this team in a pretty good position in the playoffs. We are now just 3 wins away from a second trip for this franchise to the World Series over the course of this playthrough. So we are now in Oakland for the middle 3 games in this series. Did what we wanted to do, as we talked about, taking 1 game in Chicago. Looks like the same thing happened over in the National League, where the series is knotted up at 1 game apiece. Obviously, would love to win 3 straight at home. but at a minimum, we want to take 2 out of 3, and if we have to head back to Chicago with a lead. But clearly would love to win 3 in a row at home against Chicago. Don't know how realistic that is. We've got Jason DeCaro on the mound today. 30-year-old was 12-7 with a 3.50 ERA for us this year. Luis Romero on the mound for the White Sox. The right-hander was 13-5 with a 2.86 ERA. Decent stuff, good movement, ground ball tendencies. Put up a 4.7 WAR this year. So another challenging pitching matchup for us. But to be fair, the White Sox probably view it as a pretty challenging pitching matchup for themselves as well. We got the job done today, though. A 7-5 victory. Looks like it was all in the bullpen. R.J. Cope with the win in relief. Ogle with the loss for the White Sox. Alejandro Landin, the young second baseman, with a homer. And the catcher, Dave Ackley, has homered in 3 consecutive games in this series. Taking a look at the box score, we jumped out to a 2-0 lead in the second. They ended up tying it up by the 5th. We scored a run in the 6th, and then they scored 3 runs across the 7th and 8th. So we were trailing 5-3 heading into the bottom of the 9th. You can see the win probabilities strongly favored the White Sox at the start of the inning. But a double by Brailovsky and then a 3-run home run by Alejandro Landin put us ahead for good and decided the outcome, obviously, there in the bottom of the 9th inning as we walked off the White Sox. So that's a really nice way to win it. 14 hits for us today. Andy Toribio, the only guy without a hit, got 4 hits from Brailovsky, 3 from Ramos, and a couple from Ackley. DeCaro was solid, 2 earned runs over 5 1/3 innings with 8 strikeouts. Doug Weiss with another rough relief outing, 4 hits, 2 walks, 3 earned runs over just an inning and a third. But Cope ended up pitching the final inning in the top of the 9th to keep us as close as he could, and we erupted against Joey Ogle, left-hander who's got excellent stuff and was 8-9 this year with a 2.81 ERA. So a rough outing for their closer who had 37 saves this year, but we'll take the wins any way that we can get them. 4-hour game. And we are now 2 wins away from a potential trip to the World Series. And I don't know why I'm going to transactions rather than back to playoff coverage. The number 4 starters on the mound here today, we've got Kevin Patterson, 2-0 with a 2.19 ERA. He's pitched 1 game, and we've obviously won each of those games in the first 2 series. 12-7 with a 4.24 ERA this year. Kamari Torre on the mound for the White Sox, the right-handed pitcher, nickname Rotor Bike. Not the most intimidating profile. Below average stuff, average movement and control. He was 8-9 with a 6.04 ERA this year. This is certainly the first game where feel like the pitching matchup undoubtedly favors us. Torre seems like a guy we should be able to score some runs off. Let's see if we can get the job done. And we do enough to win the game, 6-5. Got into the bullpen again. The lefty Bobby Garland with the W for us. Hooper takes the loss for the White Sox, and Kamani O'Banner redeems himself, picking up his first save of the series. Brailovsky with his second homer of the series. For the first time in the series, no home runs from Ackley. A lot of runs in the early innings of this game. They led us 5-4 heading into the 5th. We scored 2 runs in the 5th to take a 6-5 lead, and after that the bullpens shut everybody down. 4-hit game for Brailovsky with the ribby. Ortega 2 for 4 with the ribby. Colt Keith takes an 0-4. The batting average has dropped down to 429, although he drove in a run for us as well. Only 8 hits on the day, but we made them count. Rough outing for both Torre and Patterson. The difference was each of the starting pitchers gave up 5 runs, all earned in 4 innings pitched. But our bullpen was nearly perfect, allowing just 1 hit, 2 walks, and importantly, no runs over the last 5 innings. Over the last 5 innings, they allowed 3 hits, 4 walks, and importantly, the 1 run that we scored off of Mr. Hooper. Alejandro Landin looks like he walked with the bases loaded to give us the margin of victory. So, long rain delay in this one. Andy Brailovsky, the player of the game. It's time to get greedy now. Since we took the first 2 games of the series, we will try not to go back to Chicago at this point. We said we'd be happy taking 2 out of 3 at home, but as I said, after you take the first 2, want to get greedy. This is the matchup that did not go well for us the first time around. We lost 6-5, although neither Pillar nor Ferris were involved in the decision. But let's hope that we can settle things now over in the National League. The Braves are up 2-1 on the Phillies. And we didn't get the job done today. Caro and doubles with home runs for the White Sox. Ramos and Brailovsky with homers for us. But we lose 9-4. Pillow with the W, Ferris with the loss. So both of the starters were involved in the decision. Looks like Chicago blew things open with a 6-run, 6th inning grand slam by Caro. Milescu added a 2-run single off of Weiss, who continues to look after a really nice run as our stopper during the regular season. Has started to become a guy who's really good at pouring gasoline onto a fire when he comes in on relief. Weiss, 2 hits and 1 walk over an inning and a third. Didn't allow any runs himself, although I think he was allowing a hit or 2 that got runs that ended up being charged to Scholl. Weiss, that took his ERA for the playoffs down to 4.50, which is actually better than what we've gotten from Scholl and Levi Sterling at this point. So our excellent bullpen has shown some signs of weakness here in the playoffs thus far. We did what we ultimately wanted to do, though. We've got a 3-2 lead as we head back to Chicago. So we just need to take one of these final 2 games to guide our Oakland A's into the World Series. And we are back in Chicago, headed for Game 6. Both series following a similar pattern. The Atlanta Braves are heading back to Philadelphia with a 3-2 lead, so potential for some upsets in both of the league championship series if our A's and the Braves can each win 1 more game. We've got a rematch of that 9-0 rout here in game number 6. Certainly would expect Jeremy Martin, who, as we talked about earlier, is a very good pitcher, to pitch better today than he did last time around. We'll see whether we can get game 6 and start resting up for the World Series, or will we be facing the White Sox in a winner-take-all Game 7? And the Oakland A's are headed to the World Series, and I was wrong. We won by 9 runs once again. 10-1 victory. Dora, again, outpitched Martin. Chris Carl with the save in relief. Yanquiel Fernandez with a couple of homers. Ramos, Ortega, and Uresti. Good to see Uresti get a hit. He's been struggling a bit of late. In a 10-1 rout as our Oakland A's, after reaching their first ALCS since 2031 here in 2036, will now be in our first World Series since 2029 here in 2036. And of course, that was the year when we won our one championship with this Oakland A's squad. So we'll be trying to double up the number of titles that we've earned in this playthrough against either the Braves or the Phillies. Taking a look at the box score, we jumped on them right away with 5 runs in the first, added a couple more in the 5th. They came back with a run in the 6th, but we added insurance runs in the 8th and 9th. Wasn't the one hitter that we had in this matchup last time around, but still held the White Sox to just 6 hits while we had 15. Everybody except Ackley and Keith in the lineup had hits for us today. 3 hits games. Jake Ortega, Arturo Uresti, and Yanquiel Fernandez all with 3 hits. Ramos and Toribia added a couple of hits each as well. So the offense was impressive today. Chase Dora ran his record to 3-1 in these playoffs. Quality start, 5 hits, 6 strikeouts, and 1 earned run. 3-inning save for Chris Carl, who allowed just 1 hit while striking out 2. Horrible outing for Jeremy Martin. Went just 2/3 of an inning, allowed 5 hits, and those 5 earned runs that we scored. Mike Lambert gave them a solid performance, 6 1/3 innings out of the bullpen, 7 hits, 3 runs. Ended up suffering a herniated disc in his back, but the season is over, and our Oakland Athletics are heading to the World Series here in 2036. And we've got a couple of wild card teams that took out the top teams in their leagues in the ALDS here in the 2036 World Series. The Battle of the A's, the Atlanta Braves against our Oakland Athletics here. The Braves ended up doing the exact same thing that we did, taking out the Phillies in 6 games in the American League Championship Series. Take a look at our matchups here, and we were a little bit better than the Braves this year. We were 95 and 67, as we've talked about. They were 93 and 69. Teams did not play each other this year. On paper, we're definitely favored as far as our offense. We outscored the Braves by 128 runs this year, 884 to 756. Their pitching was slightly better than ours. They allowed 11 fewer runs than we did this season. We are going to get to take on the incredible two-way superstar Mike Ramsey in this series. And although he and our ace Jackson Ferris aren't going to be pitching until game number 3, we could potentially have those two on the mound for game number 7, depending on how this series goes. We'll talk more about Ramsey as a pitcher when we get to game number 3. Hopefully we won't be talking about him too much in the box score over these next few games. Jason DeCaro on the mound for us. The right-hander's been solid throughout his Oakland career. Sergio Campos, who was 9-5 with a 4.54 ERA on the mound for Atlanta. And you may remember the name Sergio Campos because Campos was brutal for us before we ended up trading him away to Atlanta. Had a 5.49 ERA for us this year after we brought him on board, thinking he could be the missing link in our pitching staff. He went 3-2 for Atlanta with a 3.28 ERA for them. So he pitched much better for the Braves than he did for Oakland this season. We'll see if we can get some revenge on Mr. Campos, or will Mr. Campos have some revenge on our Oakland squad for trading him away this year. Take a quick look. I'm assuming the Braves still have one of the best payrolls in baseball here in 2036, but we'll take a quick look before we get the season started. Yeah, the 7th highest budget in baseball, the 8th highest player payroll in all of baseball, so certainly operating a bit different economic stratosphere than we are in Oakland, but that doesn't mean that we can't upset them, as we saw when we took out the Dodgers in 2029. And our Oakland A's, the second lowest budget in baseball, and with some of the trades that we made, including trading away Campos and Brady Harris most notably, we ended the year with the lowest payroll in all of baseball. We are going to up our ticket prices just another $1 here for the World Series. Probably could do it more than that, but we are trying to save the A's in Oakland at this point, so we want to make sure that the fans still remain feeling valued by us, despite the fact that Mr. Fisher is still the owner. So we are potentially 4 wins away from a World Series championship, 4 losses away from a disappointing end to what has been a successful season. See if we can get things started here in game number 1 on a positive note and a 1-0 victory. And Weiss with the win in relief. R.J. Dabovich, the 37-year-old, takes the loss. So, sure, we got some good pitching performances from both guys. 7 hits for the Braves, 6 for our A's. Yanquiel Fernandez with a run-scoring double in the 7th was the only run in the game. Their shortstop, Mike Ramsey, went 1 for 4 as a cleanup hitter. We had 6 guys with 1 hit, none bigger, of course, than Yanquiel Fernandez hit. DeCaro, another solid outing, 4 hits, 5 strikeouts over 5 2/3 innings. Campos was also good, 3 hits, 3 walks, no earned runs over 5 1/3. The stopper Weiss did the job well today, scattered 3 hits over the 3 innings he pitched, struck out 4, and earned that victory in relief. 1 down, 3 to go for our Oakland Athletics. And we'll move right on to game number 2. And it looks like they've pushed up Mike Ramsey, and he's on normal rest now. Ramsey led the National League in wins, innings pitched, strikeouts, ERA, WHIP, home runs per 9, strikeouts per 9, strikeout to walk ratio, quality start percentage, FIP minus, and an insane 11.7 WAR. So a truly historic and dominant pitching season with the pitching triple crown from Mr. Mike Ramsey, who was picked 3rd overall out of Old Dominion just 3 years ago. And oh yeah, in addition to what Ramsey did on the mound this year, he also had 36 homers, 96 ribbies, and a .278 batting average with a 6.1 WAR, while being a well above average defensive second baseman for them, who also has occasionally played shortstop for them, as we saw in the first game of this series. So going to be a great challenge for our Oakland A's against the incredible Mike Ramsey. We're probably going to have to beat him at least once if we're going to win this World Series. The hope is that we'll do it today. We have also moved up our ace, Jackson Ferris, who is on more than normal rest since our series finished a day before the Braves-Phillies NLCS finished. Certainly, anytime you go up against a guy like Ramsey, even with an ace like Ferris on the mound, you're going to be the underdog, but we'll see if we can get the W here today. And we do get a 5-4 victory in 10 innings. Closer Kamani O'Banner with the W in relief. Traded runs in the first and second innings. They came back with runs in the 4th and the 5th to take a 3-1 lead. We cut that lead in half with a run in the bottom of the 5th. They extended it to 4-2 in the seventh. 2 runs in the bottom of the ninth. Brailovsky and Ortega, both with bases loaded walks off of Camden Reisinger. So that's a brutal way for the Braves to give up a 2-run lead in the bottom of the ninth. And then after that, the wily veteran Colt Keith with the walk-off run-scoring single in the bottom of the 10th to send Oakland to Atlanta up 2-0. Ferris was not that good. 7 hits, 3 walks, 3 earned runs over 4 2/3. But after that, over the final 5 1/3 innings, our relievers allowed just 3 hits, 1 earned run. Different result for their bullpen. Ramsey was excellent, as you'd expect. 1 earned run and 10 strikeouts over 6 2/3 innings. But we did end up scoring 3 runs, only 1 of them earned, off of Reisinger and Renfroe in the late innings of the game. So Ramsey gets the award as the player of the game. But importantly, our A's, as we've done a few times through these playoffs, turn the win probabilities over very quickly in the late innings of a game. And we will be heading to Atlanta up 2-0 and just 2 wins away from a potential world title. And although we have a 2-0 lead in this World Series, we head to Atlanta with relatively modest ambitions. If we can just get at least 1 game Atlanta and head home with a 3-2 advantage, we would certainly accept that at this point. Clearly, we'd love to win 2, as much as we'd like to have the fans potentially celebrating a World Series in Oakland. There's never any guarantees. So we'd love to win 2 in Atlanta and just fly back to Oakland for some fans waiting for us at the airport and getting ready to have a big parade. But as long as we get 1 win in these next potentially 3 games in Atlanta, we won't be able to complain. We've got Chase Dora, who's been outstanding in the playoffs for us, 3-1 with a 1.90 ERA, going up against Ernesto Romero, who's been good for Atlanta. Romero, a left-hander. We haven't faced too many lefties recently. 11-8 with a 4.26 ERA for the Braves. So Colt Keith, the late inning hero in game number 2, won't be in the lineup today for us, since we'll be facing a left-handed pitcher. Going to go back to the young third baseman, Mr. Mesidor, in the lineup for us at third base. Gives us better defense. Hard to imagine he's going to come through with as many big hits as we've gotten from Keith over this playoff run this year, and quite honestly in some previous playoff runs as well. But we'll see if we can stretch the lead to 3-0 here in game number 3. And we do. Camanio Banner with another win in relief, and it looks like Camden Reisinger with another rough outing. They got homers from Winokur and Tatgenhorst. We got a homer from Alejandro Landin. But when it's all said and done, we've now taken a 3-0 lead here in the 2036 World Series. Taking a look at the box score, we scored 2 in the first. They came back and tied us in the third. They extended the lead by a run in the fourth. We tied them in the fifth. We extended a 1-run lead into the sixth. They came back in the bottom of the ninth with a solo home run by Tatgenhorst to tie it. But then 3 runs for Oakland in the top of the 10th, double by Ortega, and then a run-scoring double by Toribio off of Reisinger. The big hits push Oakland to the brink of a World Series championship. Couple hits today from Ortega, who's hitting .344 in the playoffs. Mesidor, 1 for 3 with a ribby. He's hitting .357, although only 2 ribbies. As I mentioned, we face mostly righties, so we've seen a lot more of Keith than Mesidor in recent games. Dora, his roughest outing of the playoffs, 7 hits, 2 walks, 3 earned runs over 4 innings. But the bullpen was fantastic. Carl, Weiss, and O'Banner each pitched 2 innings, so 6 innings combined, allowing just 1 hit, no walks, and 1 earned run. So certainly was painful when Tatgenhorst did hit that solo home run off of O'Banner in the bottom of the 9th, but we came back to score those 3 runs in the top, and then O'Banner pitched a perfect 10th inning to close things out for us. Reisinger, 3 hits, 3 earned runs in the 1 inning that he pitched. Jake Ortega is the player of the game. And we're now just 1 win away from not just winning a World Series, but potentially sweeping a World Series. Kevin Patterson, undefeated in the playoffs, but a 4.41 ERA, going up against Dylan Watts, who's also undefeated in the playoffs, but has a 6.23 ERA. The righty Dylan Watts, decent stuff. Extreme fly ball tendencies. Looks like he can give up some home runs. Not going to walk a lot of batters, though. 6-8 with a 5.05 ERA this year. Yeah, and we said he's going to give up homers and not walk too many people, and you can see that in the numbers. Pretty ridiculous. Allows far more home runs than walks. 36 home runs allowed in 130 innings, which is a sickly number. 2.5 home runs allowed per 9 innings. He walks only 1.5 batters per 9 innings. So we'll see. Hopefully, even if he doesn't walk us too much, we'll be able to score some runs here today. Would love to close things out right now. And our Oakland A's sweep the World Series here in 2036. A second World Series championship for the Oakland A's in this playthrough, despite having had the lowest payroll and the lowest budget for most of the last 13 seasons since we started on this voyage. A 7-6 victory. Looks like it once again ended up in the bullpen. Levi Sterling, who we had been thinking about taking off of the playoff roster after he had had some struggles in the previous rounds. We ended up keeping him on rather than bringing Mike Curtis back onto the playoff roster. And Sterling gets the W in relief. Kamani O'Banner, the closer, with the save. Home runs today from Colt Keith, Yanquiel Fernandez, Andy Brailovsky, and Arturo Uresti. Seems like there's been several games where Keith and Fernandez, who were acquisitions at the trade deadline this year, and Brailovsky, who was a trade deadline acquisition a year ago, all hit home runs. They got a home run from Buscardini and Rosado. When all was said and done, the reunion with Colt Keith paid off in the playoffs. He was named the World Series MVP. So about a year after we traded him to San Francisco, after 6.5 brilliant years in Oakland, we reunited with Colt Keith right before the trade deadline, and he ends up a World Series champion for the second time with the Oakland A's. Take a look at the box score and how this 7-6 game went down. The Braves scored a couple in the second. The game was tied 3-3 in the fifth. We scored 3 in the sixth and then added 1 in the seventh to take a 7-3 lead into the late innings. The Braves definitely made it close. 2 runs in the eighth, and then a run-scoring triple by Luis Lujan, who was with us a year ago off of Kamani O'Banner to close the deficit to 7-6. But it looks like Laborin lined out in the bottom of the ninth and it was a sweep this year for the Oakland Athletics. 2 hits today from Keith, Fernandez, and Brailovsky. Ramsey 0 for 4, did walk. Sergio Palomares, the youngster, came on and played some defense for us. Mesidor came on and played some defense for Brailovsky as we pivoted Keith over to first base. Patterson only went 2 1/3 innings, so a rough outing from him. Yeah, he got hurt. We'll have to see. Elbow injury, so that's not necessarily what we want to see, but hopefully it's not that serious. And if it is, he was still the starting pitcher in the 4th and clinching game of the World Series. So if we have to scramble a bit with the rotation next year, we'll deal with that next year while being World Series champions. Ended up being a bullpen game for us. Bobby Garland, Levi Sterling, Chisen Harimoto, Chris Carl, Jeremy Scholl, and Kamani O'Banner all got the job done. You can see, with the exception of Harimoto, they all gave up hits, and O'Banner, Scholl, and Garland all gave up runs. But when all was said and done, our Oakland A's did enough to claim the 2036 World Series championship. And I think it's fair to say at this point, with over the last 8 seasons, 6 playoff appearances, and now 2 World Series championships, I think we've saved the Oakland A's. Before we finish things up, and we'll be back in our next episode to do our annual roster review, and then after that we'll be taking a look at our minor league system and checking in on some of the top prospects and top players around baseball in subsequent episodes. But we'll see what Colt Keith ended up doing for us this year, and we'll see whether or not he opts into that contract next year. Fortunately, the Giants were willing to retain most of it. He didn't do much for us in the regular season, ended up getting hurt, and he hit just .211 with 1 homer and 6 ribbies in 57 at-bats for us this year. Just a 79 WRC plus, and he was below average in the playoffs. But when it got to the postseason this year, a .375 average, 3 home runs, 6 doubles, and 11 ribbies in 48 at-bats for Mr. Keith. Also scored 10 runs, put up an OPS of close to 1,100, a 190 WRC plus. So brilliant playoff performance from Mr. Keith, and he was a big part of the reason that we are now celebrating a 2nd World Championship here in Oakland. And we made it to the start of the off-season. Just had the parade in Oakland to hoist our 2nd World Series championship. Nice season score, as you would expect. Taking a look at the manager's office now. Officially have that 2nd World Series championship with the A's, and with the 95 win season that we had, won 1 more game than we did when we won the title in 2029, 1 less than the 96 win season that we had in 2033. Still have only won that 1 division title back in 2029, but as we said, 6 playoff appearances in the last 8 years, and now 2 World Series championships. We'll check in and we'll see what Mr. Fisher has to say about the results this season. We've got some big decisions coming up. Jason DeCaro, $6 million. We'll have to see. I think we'll probably bring him back. Jamie DeVore is going to be making $10 million. We'll almost certainly be moving on from him, as he did not even make the playoff roster. Chisen Harimoto, we've got an option on. Colt Keith, not surprisingly, opts in. But as we talked about, he's going to be making $26 million, but we're not going to be paying most of that. Development facilities are open, so we're going to be spending a lot of time thinking about that between now and the next episode. Doesn't look like we've got any of the top 10 prospects in baseball, but before we move forward, we'll be checking in on our minor league system in one of the upcoming episodes. We've also been scouting a lot of the international amateur free agent players. We're going to need to hire a new manager down in the ACL. Review the season goals. All Mr. Fisher wanted was a winning record, but we made the playoffs. We improved our pitcher's ERA. Still not happy that we haven't added an MVP. Still not happy that we haven't built up our farm system to the level that he wants. Still wants us to improve the fan interest more. He's overall good with our performance, wants us to reach the playoffs, upgrade at catcher, still wants us to add an MVP, and he wants us to build a dynasty in the next couple of seasons. Is he going to give us any more money to do that? I believe we were at $178 million last year. And he's cut our budget down to $176 million. So the fun of working for Mr. Fisher. I believe when we won the first World Series, he cut our budget as well. So that is the frustrating part about this. You can see with all the playoff games, we made a ton of money this past season. Fan interest has jumped to 89 with that second World Series championship, so that should actually be positive for us. But definitely, yeah, you can see 2029 when we won the World Series, we had a $126 million budget, and he cut it $2 million the next year, and the same thing this year. We went from 178 to 176 next year. So it does seem like winning a World Series is a good way for Mr. John Fisher to decide to cut your budget, which seems a bit paradoxical to me, but that's the fun of trying to compete with these Oakland A's. And fortunately, when all was said and done this year, it worked out pretty well. As I said, we'll be back in the next episode with a complete review of our roster as we start planning for the off season. The episode after that, we'll take a look at our minor league system and some of our former players, some of the top prospects around baseball. We'll also discuss what we're going to be doing in the development lab this off season in one of those next couple of episodes, and then we will really begin the off season in earnest as we try to position these Oakland A's for a repeat in 2037. And we'll start talking about who might be back with us next year and who we might be moving on from in our next episode. Until then, thanks so much for watching, and hope you have a great day.